So one of the things that we've been tracking is how the media in this country, whenever there's a question about war, whenever there's a hint of conflict, what corporate media does is they immediately pivot to the right. They immediately go full neocon, American exceptionalist, we're the world police, and they start giving tough questions and applying pressure from the right, from a more hawkish direction against politicians. Now, our politicians are already freakishly hawkish. Look at the military-industrial complex. Look at the amount of money they take from Honeywell and Boeing and Raytheon, et cetera. And then look at how they do no-bid contracts and response. And we got endless amounts of tanks and fighter jets and all that stuff, right? And we sell weapons to some of the worst dictators in the world. But even given that, I think the media is more consistently hawkish than the politicians. And we've seen so many examples of that recently with Russia and Ukraine, with what's going on in Ukraine, with the war that Russia is waging in Ukraine. So here you have some corporate media hacks. We're going to run through this. Pressing Jen Psaki, basically begging for World War III. They're horny for World War III. They're like, why not do direct military engagement? A lot of bad stuff is happening. Let's take a look.
Just to put a finer point on some of the questions you've so far been asked, why shouldn't the images of the atrocities from Bucha compel a worldwide, unified, coalition kinetic response?
You mean a military war? Tell me more about what you mean.
Sure, a military response led by the United States and the international partners.
As in bringing military troops on the ground from the United States and NATO.
Well, the president has described outrageous things. You've called them atrocities. You've said perhaps we should brace ourselves for worse. Why not?
I think what the president's objective is, and his responsibility, is to make decisions that are in the interest of the United States and the national security of the United States and the American people. And that is not to go to war with Russia. It is to do everything in our power to hold them accountable, to support efforts through international systems to do exactly that, and to provide military assistance, security assistance, and support to the Ukrainian people and the Ukrainian government. That's exactly what we're doing. But it is not in our interests or in the interest of the American people for us to be in a war with.
Look, I'm not a fan of Jen Psaki. She has West Wing brain. She's a corporate Democrat in her own right. She's about to ditch this job to go get a cushy MSNBC gig that I'm sure is going to pay her millions of dollars. I'm not a fan of her. But her answer there was spot on. She's smacking down this smug prick who has the inability, forget the inability to play chess. Homeboy isn't even playing checkers. I don't understand. There's atrocities happening. There's war crimes happening. I mean, look at what happened in Bucha. Shouldn't we do a military response against Russia and lead the world and use like our NATO allies in order to do that? You're casually asking, please, sir, can I have a crumb of World War III? Can I have a crumb of nuclear annihilation, sir? How do you not realize this is something that is off the table? To not take this off the table means you have a death wish. I mean, because we've been talking about how everything's spiraling out of control, right? And there's the tit-for-tat escalation and all that stuff. What you're calling for is like the final step where it is now fully out of control. What is the U.S. and NATO attack Russia and there's no retaliation? Is that what you expect to happen? Is that what you expect to happen? And even if he says yes to that, well, what are the odds that we're talking about here? What are we talking about? There's got to be, what, over a 60 or 70% chance there's some response in kind? I mean, our fucking fingers are like a millimeter away from the red button. And he's like, I don't get it. Why don't you just press the red button? Why don't we do direct... Now, by the way, so he's kind of direct with it there. Maybe he couches it a touch, but there are others who aren't even couching it. So let me show you this next headline. This is from a few days ago. This is in The Hill. MSNBC's Ali Velshi calls for NATO's direct military involvement against Russia. Direct military involvement. Have all of you lost your fucking minds? Guys, this isn't like Iraq. This isn't like Afghanistan. Which, by the way, those were bad enough. Russia has the largest nuclear arsenal on your planet. Take your heads out of your rectums. For the love of God. And they have a phenomenally powerful position. When mainstream media all gets on the same page and they hammer stuff home, it tends to move polls. Now, by the way, I'm not downplaying the horrific atrocities and war crimes committed by Russia. Russia did an illegal invasion of Ukraine. Putin has imperial ambitions. There's a shitload of natural gas that they found off the coast of Crimea in 2012, and then, oh, would you look at that? Putin takes it in 2014. I wonder if those things are related. Same thing, we now know in eastern Ukraine and in western Ukraine, there's a tremendous amount of natural gas, which could really develop Ukraine further and make them a major player. That threatens Russia. Russia's a petrostate. They want that natural gas. This isn't to downplay in any way, shape, or form what Vladimir Putin is doing. It's to say this is not on the table because the world shouldn't be destroyed over this dispute. Now, by the way, and this is the part that drives me fucking crazy. Look at what the U.S. is doing in Yemen right now. Right now. Now, in many ways, that's even worse because we're responsible for it, at least partly responsible for it. There's been hundreds of thousands of deaths of civilians in Yemen. That is all funded by and backed by the United States. It's our weapons going to our top ally, Saudi Arabia, as they wantonly massacre women, children, innocent civilians. They've done bombing campaigns on mosques and hospitals and open air markets. They've blockaded the country and they're starving the country, all because the Houthis took over in Yemen. And so they say, oh, those are Shia Houthis. We can't have them in power. They're an enemy of ours. So now they're waging a genocide in the country to try to put a Sunni government friendly to Saudi Arabia back in there and friendly to the West back in there. That's what they're trying to do. We are directly engaged in supporting a genocide, and none of these idiots have ever sat there and been consistent with their logic and said, look, man, shit, how can we not bomb Saudi Arabia immediately to protect the Yemeni babies? Look at all the Yemeni babies that are dying. Look at all the women and children who are dying. Look at all the corpses. This is a genocide. These are war crimes. These are atrocities. We're supposed to be the world police. We're supposed to be better than that. Why are we not bombing Saudi Arabia to stop them? Why are we not going after them? If they were being consistent in their logic and their worldview, they would have called for direct military engagement against Saudi Arabia. But they're not consistent. They're not consistent at all. And for them, they're just getting dragged around by their heartstrings. Who's our official enemy? Well, we can directly military engage our official enemies, even if they have nuclear weapons. But crimes that are equally as bad, if not worse, if they're our allies, we won't even fucking talk about it. We won't even say, hey, maybe we shouldn't give Saudi Arabia weapons. Or, hey, maybe we should sanction Saudi Arabia. They're not even engaging in those conversations. A much lower degree of escalation with Saudi Arabia to stop a genocide. They won't even entertain that. It's just out of sight, out of mind, not going to talk about it because it doesn't fit the narrative. Do you understand how ludicrous this entire conversation is? Do you understand that? We have blood on our hands over Yemen. They won't even fucking talk about it. Never mind be consistent with their standard and their ideology and say, maybe we should militarily attack Saudi Arabia. Now, I don't want to militarily attack Saudi Arabia. I would like to cut off the weapons to them. Sure. I would like to have a conversation about maybe kicking them off the UN Human Rights Council. Sure. Maybe even have the conversation about sanctioning them. Sure. But I'm consistent. Those are things I'd like to do, not only with Saudi Arabia, with Russia over what's going on in Ukraine. But what I'm taking off the table for sure is World War III, because I don't have a fucking cinder block where my brain is supposed to be, you absolute clowns. And they are misleading the public day in and day out and not giving you an accurate picture of the world. They're not. Unbelievable, man. Unbelievable. This isn't to downplay what Russia is doing. It's to say World War III should be off the table for anybody with a functioning brain. Clearly, these people don't have functioning brains, and they're not even consistent in their we should be the world police ideology. If you want to see me and Crystal Ball interview legends like Noam Chomsky, Cornel West, and more, subscribe to Crystal, Kyle, and Friends on Substack. $5 a month gets you the video version a day early. Remember, we take 0 ad dollars for this podcast. Or you can sign up on Substack for free and get the audio version a day later. Link in the video description box below.